Hey folks, so in this video I'm going to install the i5-13400F, the Thermalright Assassin X90 SE on a Gigabyte B660, Gigabyte Gaming X B660. If you have the B760, it's pretty much the exact same thing, right? So you can follow along in this video. Alright, so we're just going to do the CPU and the CPU cooler in this. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, here we have the CPU. This does come with its own CPU cooler, and honestly, I'm not very impressed with it. It works okay with this CPU, but I'd still rather upgrade the CPU cooler. Now you will find some slight performance improvements with a better CPU cooler. As I drop this down, folks, and I'm just going to go ahead and put it in here. Whoop. Need that to sit down. Okay, so there's a triangle in this very lower left. That matches up with the triangle on the black cover. If you read this from left to right, the left side matches up with your I/O ports, okay? Now, potentially you could be swapping this out. You don't have the cover. That's why it's good to be able to read left and right. This CPU can go in only one way. Can't rotate it 90 degrees. Can't rotate it 180 because there's grooves in it that match up with, the grooves that are in this one do not match up with the ones that are lower. So let's continue on. All right, so I'm gonna drop this down and the cover's gonna pop off. All right, boom. Sometimes it flies off, sometimes it's loose. I always double check my CPU. This green board should be basically at the same level as the enclosure here, the gray enclosure, right? Now I'm going to drop that down and then drop the hammer, basically, and boom. We're good there, all right? Now, this is my first time installing this CPU cooler. What we're going to do with this, folks, is I'm actually going to use the same CPU. I'll make probably 3 of these videos, maybe a 4th one. We're going to compare 3 different Thermalright models, and we are going to throw in a Deepcool AG400 as well. Maybe one other CPU cooler. And just kind of, run some benchmarks, some gaming, get an idea of what the temps are, all right? Now, I will have to jump around, like I said, because I haven't installed this before. So one thing right off the bat, let's go ahead and take the sticker off. Probably not a bad idea to wipe this down. In case it does have residue on it. Now, in a little bit, we'll put some thermal paste on here. This CPU cooler did come with thermal paste. I'm not sure offhand which one it was because I took them all out and put them somewhere else, but I'll grab the containers. So, in the packaging, you have backing plate. You'll need this. Has threaded posts in it. You will need these 2 brackets that come with it. The second one, and then the fan brackets as well, all right? Now it also comes with these guys, the spacers and screws. So we need to just grab the set in the middle. This is LGA 1700. If you were doing this for LGA 1151 or 1200, you use the black ones. And if you're AM4 or AM5, you'd use this pinkish red one. So I've sold off most of my 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th gen. So good chance we will never install this kit. And eventually I may get some AMD CPUs in here again. I'm really just kind of an Intel guy, and You know, it's kind of, honestly, kind of difficult to run a channel like this, having multiple types of CPUs, like the AMDs and the, you know, AMD and Intel at the same time. It's better to just, I think, have one. Though everybody would like to see, you know, comparisons, right? So, all right. We should get the instructions out, right? You guys like instructions? Let's go ahead and get those out. All right, so there's our parts list. We obviously won't use all that. We're not going to use that one. Here is basically what we're going to do, all right? So, we already put the CPU in. Now the bracket, folks, since I'm going to be swapping this out, I'm not going to do it, but if you want to keep this thing in here for a long time, take these covers off of the plastic sticky goo stuff, and you'll use that. It makes life a little easier when you put this underneath the motherboard, because it'll actually stay in place. In my case, though, folks, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the motherboard over. We're going to line it up. This does go on, it would appear, only one way, at least hopefully. All right, so I'm going to drop that down. Now I need my hand in here, and then as I get towards the counter, I'm then going to remove my hand and slide it across. So voila, they stay there. It's a little more difficult doing that if you try to do it completely over the counter. Now there are some, you'll find with these different Thermalrights, there are different backplates. And this one, you know, very similar to it, has adjustability, 1151. You may not get the exact same one that I have, which is kind of amazing how that works out. But if you get the other one, and some of the other sets have different ones from what I've seen, these adjust. All the way out is LGA 1700, and the inner one's 1151. All right. Now, next, in the instructions, folks, we are going to grab our spacers, all right, blue spacers, if I can get this open. All right, you really should not do this over the motherboard, right? Last thing you want to do is damage components, so don't follow along with what I'm doing from that aspect. All right, there's all our parts. Now, the way I look at it, folks, for me, if I damage a motherboard, it just means I get to go buy another one, right? Or if I sell a motherboard. But for you guys, you may not be able, obviously, to replace it as easily as yours truly. And not that, you know, I've got a ton of money. I just, I'll sell something else and buy, you know, another motherboard or whatever. All the money I make from the channel goes back into the channel to buy stuff. I pretty much don't have a real income off of this, except I do save 10%, so that's about it, folks. All right, if anybody cares, probably nobody cares. So here is the fan, and it's got to go on here a certain way, all right? Excuse me, this is the tower heatsink. The fan has to go on here a certain way, and you see basically the fan's supposed to go on this side, okay? So why am I showing you this? We have to orient the fan a certain way. That means these brackets have to be put on here a certain way, all right? And basically they're going to go like this. Now, we have two screws. This is where if you have a magnetic screwdriver, it always comes in handy. I'm using this Be Quiet one. You know, Intel gave me a couple different screwdrivers. And it's kind of funny because they're like what you would put in a pocket protector. They're almost virtually worthless for this job. All right, so we're not going to tighten that all the way down, folks. Just enough that it stays there, but we want it to be loose enough that I can work in this other screw. And I'm using what appears to be a number 2 Phillips. I'll probably use number 1. But it does feel like number 2 is the ideal one to have. Now make sure when you put the bracket on that you orient it the right way. Right, if you do that 180 degrees to the way it's in there, basically flipped out, it is most likely not going to work. Because there will be, when we put the other one on, there's a certain distance that you need those posts to be apart from each other. I gotta say, I wish they would, besides having in the instructions, figure out a way to note it so that when you look at it, you know exactly which way the thing goes. All right, so 2 more screws here. Like I said, I will re-benchmark the, if I can get that in there. See, this is one of those designs, folks, that I absolutely hate these. You have to have a lot of patience. I say this a lot in the videos, but Nock 2, I believe, has the simplest design. And of course, they have the patent on it, I'm sure. So therefore, everybody else has to try and do the same thing, but work around that patent. And so basically, they've added additional components that just don't make a lot of sense. Don't make your life any easier. Now, Nock 2 has the post that sticks all the way up. You put the spacer on it, then you drop the bracket on, and then you screw a nut into it, which is in a lot of ways the same exact amount of parts, but as you saw how difficult it was for me to get that screw in there, you don't have that issue with that design where this one does. So we want to just make sure, we're going to put thermal paste on here, but we want to just make sure this is going to line up, right? And I'm just going to put a couple screws on there, a couple threads onto the screw, I should say, and that one, before I go through and put my thermal paste on. This is just, me double checking that I got everything lined up. Because if these things don't line up correctly, you are not going to get it to work. And we are having a little problem over here. I think I just got it. Nope. So the other aspect, the more parts you add, the more you increase your tolerances. So tolerance stack up. It's not a good thing. So folks, that's on there. And you can see it's wobbling right now. Once we tighten it down, it should not do that anymore. Now this is definitely an improvement over the stock cooler. Will it be, this awesome CPU cooler? Probably not. All right, so I had two types of thermal paste. I believe the TF7 is the good one. TF4 is the one that came with this. Should be the cheaper one. So we use what they provided. And you know, sometimes I put dots in here, like in this case, we'll do 5 little dots. That was a kind of a bigger dot than I really wanted to do. And then hopefully, if you were to check this afterwards, hopefully we got really good spread on our thermal paste. All right. So folks, don't sweat it if this takes longer than the video. I honestly don't edit much. Like I may pause the video here and there, but I do not do a lot of editing because I want you guys to really see how long this takes. And you know, maybe you learn something from some of the mistakes I might make along the way. Always best to watch the video in entirety before you attempt the installation yourself. All right, so we got a couple threads on both sides. Now I'm going to start getting more, but I'm alternating. We want to make sure that thermal paste spreads evenly across there. And at some point I won't be able to turn this anymore. Either that or my wrist and hand will hurt really bad. And we'll just quit. Just kidding on that. But yeah, keep cranking. So this, folks, looks like you're going to have good RAM clearance, so we won't even bother showing that aspect of the installation. It's pretty easy to install RAM. Hopefully you guys know already. You know, if you have a fully functioning motherboard, I guess I'll go ahead and demonstrate it. First thing, you got to make sure you have compatible RAM, right? This may not be compatible, but we're going to use it for demonstration purposes. I have a ton of RAM. I'll find one that works. So this can go in only one way, and this is shorter than this side. You have to look at the RAM and see this side shorter than that side. So we would put, if we have a pair of RAM, assuming I got that lined up right, you would put them in A2 and B2, all right? And voila, all right? Of course, if you have an M.2 with your operating system, you'll want to put that here. There's some other, you know, things that people may say. I haven't really noticed much performance difference between any of the M.2s. That said, this one has the heatsink, and you know, it should keep your M.2 cooler. All right, one thing we haven't done yet, folks, put our fan on. I get distracted sometimes. All right, so here's our fan. Intake side, exhaust. We want the intake to take the cool air, blow it out the back of the fan across the heatsink and back off this side, and then it's going to go out the back of your case, all right? So we have to at some point plug our 4-pin in, and I'm going to go ahead and do that now. You can do it after you actually put the fan on. On this motherboard, there's a 4-pin for CPU fan and CPU optional. We want CPU fan, and this can go in only one way, folks. And this is one of those times where if you have glasses, probably a good idea to put them on. All right. So now we got to figure out how our brackets go on. Looks like it's going to be like this and like that. And so you can either go ahead and put one side up now, or try and do them both at the same time. Sometimes these things hook good in there, sometimes they don't. In this case, it looks like they're going to. So I'm going to bring this over and pull these both at the same time, okay, and lock that into place. Sometimes they don't stick the first time. You got to do it again, and voila. And a little press here usually gets it in there good. So there's that, folks. Now, you know, other things. So let's say you are doing your first build. I needed my CPU in. I need my RAM in. For my front panel connectors, I only need the power switch connected, which I have connected. I'm going to need the 24-pin ATX from the power supply connected. I need this 1x8 for the CPU power connected. I don't need my MTOT2 or any SATAs connected. I may have mentioned the RAM. One stick of RAM usually is best when you're just starting up. And then depending on your CPU, like this CPU does not have integrated graphics, right? So my case, I have like 30 graphics cards. I would go ahead and I'm going to need a graphics card. So this one does not have the PCI connectors, but I would, drop that in, all right? Now, if you had PCIe connectors, they would come from the power supply, and you would connect those to the graphics card. But that's, not showing you this actually in a case. Kind of short changes on a few things, but really what this video is about, folks, is installing the CPU cooler. And one thing to note, this is a little crooked, right? We want this thing to sit rather low on our tower, right? If you ever run a temperature probe on these, it's going to be hottest down here closer to the CPU. So if your fan is sitting way up high, you're not actually necessarily cooling the spot you need to be hitting. But hey, folks, that's going to do it for this video. Please like, please subscribe, and check out the other 2 videos, thank you, that I'll have in the future from Thermalright, as well as the benchmarks.